evening, afternoon-ish, whatever. I don't really know what to call 4 o'clock. I'm gonna be honest. It's kind of... It needs to stop sitting on the fence. It's either nighttime or the afternoon. Just, you can eat dinner, you can have a nap and still eat dinner. I don't know. It's a confusing time. But that being said, welcome once again. It's Monday, 4 o'clock. That means it is Infinite Musician Television. I am your host, Dan Weiss, owner and creator of MFile Music Theory and Songwriting, helping you gain control over your musical power and passion to allow you to become the musician you are supposed to be, making an impact with your music so you can create the music that you hear in your head. We've got a banger for you tonight. It's going to be thick, fat, so much knowledge dropping on you. It's going to be crazy. You're going to be looking for an umbrella, and then it's going to fail you, like in a windstorm or a Wile E. Coyote cartoon. We're going to start off with a little story, and I want to really frame this whole thing with a really important line, quote, whatever. I guess I'm quoting myself, which is kind of, an asshole thing to do, but it's something that when I said it while I was typing things out, it really stuck out as something that I think we all need to kind of recognize and call out in ourselves when we notice it. So, this segment is titled, I was good enough to fool some people, but I wasn't satisfied. Dun dun dun. I gotta make some epic orchestral hits for that just to really make my point more dramatic. But, so, I always wanted to play guitar. That I knew that it was an instrument that had kind of caught me. It seemed really interesting. From a very young age, I was always into the Beatles. I used to watch the Beatles movie Help on like a near daily basis. And I would watch this movie over and over and over again. And the movie is very silly. And there's all kinds of action comedy things happening. They're being chased by people or trying to kill Ringo, and he's got a sacrificial ring. Real hilarious. But there's all these music videos kind of spliced right into the movie. They're trying to record their album, and they're playing these tunes, and they look really cool. And that was it for me. I was like 4 years old. Like, I'm sold. I'll put up my 4-year-old kid dream of being a joking dentist, and I want to be like the Beatles. I want to play the guitar. And for years I always had that. It was almost embarrassing how much I obsessed over wanting to be a guitar player, but never actually did it. We never got one until years and years and years later. As a kid, I was trying to save like an insane amount of money to buy a white Les Paul. I saw, I think it was in a Foo Fighters video, and I was like, that's the guitar for me. I need to have this. I used to listen to old now, but CDs on my Discman and pretend I was playing the guitar. Like, while I'm falling asleep, I'm trying to imagine myself playing the guitar and visualizing it happening for so long. And, eventually I got a hold of a guitar, and I would spend hours and hours and hours and hours just playing. I would come home from school, and I'd always have that guitar in my hand. Always playing, always trying to get better, learning more songs, not doing my homework. But it was just, I wanted to get better at the guitar, but I mean, what's what's the underlying thing there? I wanted to be known for being good at the guitar. I wanted to reach people with my music. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. I wanted my own identity. Being able to make music and create music and have something that's truly mine. And that's coming at a time when you're looking for ways to do that anyway, as you grow up and start to realize that you are your own person, separate from your parents and everything, and it's up to you to decide how you want to represent yourself. So music was it for me. I mean, that I threw myself into it. And I think really, you see how much everybody loves a musician. People go on and on and on about, oh, I love this song. Oh, your parents tell you about concerts they saw, and oh, that was just the best. They were so good, and oh, I love this song. It makes me so happy. So it's like, well, if I can do that, I'll make my parents happy. I'll make my friends happy. I'll make people that don't even know me, don't know that I personally exist, but they'll hear my music. You're seeking admiration and approval. That's that reaching out. Right? So, I mean, as a kid, I was always kind of thought as a quiet, nerdy kid. A lot was expected of me in school. And yeah, I just wanted to create something that was mine and nobody else. And something that, it was an intangible kind of thing, but it was just me seeking to rebuild my own self. Not based on what everybody is looking at. Oh, you're this. You should be better at this. Do your homework because you got to do this. Teachers and parents and everything, that pressure comes from all sides. Especially when you're one of the smart kids and they treat you differently. And it's, I think back so many bullshit things that happened in school where it's like they let other kids down because they feel like they have to focus on certain kids. I've seen too many people who were really smart, but they slipped through the cracks because nobody gave a damn. And, I spent a lot of years being really good friends with those people. And it was the music that kind of, brought us all together. I'd be in high school and I'd be skipping class with some of my buddies and we'd be smoking out back in a buddy's pickup truck or whatever, and there'd always be a couple guitars there and we'd be entertaining people, and there was this like community togetherness, and I started to find that appreciation. People are like, yeah, that's great, and you get the pat on the back and it pushes you further. You want to get better. So eventually I tried a semester at college. I wasn't really into it. Things were kind of crazy, and I felt like I was just paying for an extension of high school. And I had to come home. I did one semester barely, and I withdrew from classes, and I had to move back home at Christmas time, and I felt really lacking in the direction department. So over time, I figured the only thing I wanted to do was music. So why not do music? When I had that idea, I gave myself to my guitar and my music and my songwriting, and I had nowhere else to go. I had nothing else to do. So making music became something that I could, again, but even bigger, build for myself. So my plan was obviously lots of studying, brushing up on my music theory essentials, really getting a good foundation of all these things that I should have been paying attention to in school, but wasn't always, because I was like, whatever, I can just play. I was researching recording equipment and mics, everything I would need for like a little demo studio in my mom's basement. Everything was portable because the recorder was only about yay big, and it was all digital at that time. This is like 2005. So I spent all my time playing, writing, recording, jamming with anybody I could to hone my skills. and I would play for people and we'd be jamming, and all this time it was always, oh, that's so great, man, that's so wild that you can play that. Wow, you're really good. I could impress people. I was good enough to fool people, but I wasn't satisfied. I knew there was so much more that I needed to be doing. On the outside, everyone's like, cool, wow, that's great. On the inside, I know it's just a couple of tricks. I know it's just a couple of chords. Easy chord shapes. Fumble through the song. Everybody loves it. But you could be doing better. You could be putting more into the music. And you feel like you're missing out. And you feel like you're missing out on what you could be giving to everybody else. So hearing back in these recordings was a bit shocking because my timing was not good. That's one of the first things you usually realize when you start really attacking and trying to analyze your own playing and figure out what you're doing. There's a really good chance that your time, your feel, is not as good as you think it is. And I really recommend getting a hold of some kind of device to record with and just really listen to yourself and see what it is you need to improve. So, trying to go and record something, no metronome, because I'm just Mr. Fantastic, right? I don't know shit, but I'm going to do it anyway. No click track, no nothing, and just trying to play along with my backing tracks, and it was a mess. There was no one else to play along with, and granted, when you're jamming, time can breathe, right? But for that to happen, you have to have a really good sense of time and feel in the first place. So, I didn't really know everything I was doing with all my recording gear. It was easy to use, but there was a bit of a steep learning curve. I was working part-time at a dollar store around the corner from my mom's house, just living in her basement while I was waiting to go to music school, and daily beratings from customers and weird people doing things, kids stealing hairspray and lighters and trying to light the dumpster on fire, and old creepy men stealing underwear and being the person that catches them. Like, it was just a lot to have to deal with. And all I wanted to do was just stay in and play music. Going to work just felt useless, especially getting treated with no respect and having to listen to, light FM adult favorites all day. 24 hours of non-stop Michael Bublé, bullshit like that. Like, it was a really hard time. I came down with mono around Christmas. I got incredibly sick, pneumonia, swollen liver, and so that put me out of capacity for a little while. And then loneliness was also a big problem too. I had moved back home, but all my friends were away at school. Like, I was supposed to be. I had all those expectations follow me my whole life, and I was feeling like a disappointment. Everyone seemed to have a lot of, their designs of what I should be doing, and I did not appear to be meeting any of them at first glance. And so that, those two things were fighting for the same space, but only one of them was based in reality. And that was one of the bigger lessons that I had to learn, to keep fighting and keep pushing to get better. But that is an angry baby trying to get in my door. You can't put a live or recording in progress sign, because a 20-month-old baby will just pull all the wires out and eat them and then, try and stab you with them. But I digress. The biggest thing that I had to prove to myself was that what I want is the thing that is reality. I knew deep down that, again, with that thought, I was good enough to fool people, but I wasn't satisfied. I can get better. I can do this. I can make things happen. I can be more than just, a party favor at a barbecue. I want to make real music. I want to actually move people with my music. I want to make an impact. So me spending all this time farting around, back home in Sarnia, and everyone being like, "Oh, I thought you would have been doing this. Oh, so when you going back to school? Oh, you're going to study music? Like, is that even a job?" That was all what they wanted, what they were thinking of. And the only thing that was real was what I wanted, what I was thinking of. And if I let in those thoughts, then their bullshit becomes my reality. So I couldn't let that happen. So what did I do? I locked myself away for a year. It was a prolific period of writing. So tens, maybe 100, 200 songs. Granted, a lot of them are shit, but all those ideas are backed up. I gave myself completely to the creative process and practically applying all of the stuff that I was learning to get myself into music school. And it became this journey of, making music and constantly making better music. So I still have all these songs. I can go through them at any time, and I have in the past. They've ended up on records. Songs that were like 15 years old. The more I wrote, the more I got better at it. The more I was able to experiment with ideas and take things even further. So after endless hours of playing, my skills tightened. It made me a far more competent and confident player. By making creativity a habit, it only strengthened the flow of creativity. Endless hours spent creating and improvising and fearless experimenting. It made me a far more desirable musician to play with. I was still very rough around the edges by much more refined standards when I got to music school. But I managed to make a name for myself pretty quickly for my creativity, for my improvising and songwriting. And because I worked so hard on getting my timing down, people used to say it was like playing with a drummer. I really focused on the groove and the feel and laying that down. You have no idea. Well, you probably do. Walk into a room of guitar players and everybody wants to shred over each other. Somebody needs to lay it down. One person comes in and kind of leads that way and is like, I don't need to show what's best about me. I need to do what's best for the song. And when that happens, you're taking the lead by not trying to take the lead. These were all really important lessons that just were like, unfolding themselves to me. I wanted to build something for myself with my music, but I ended up building myself through my music. Something to think about, folks. So, that being said, before we get into our interview segment with the illustrious Chris Bruder, I did want to do a very quick my author copies of my book have arrived, so I finally get to hold them in my hands. Check this shit out. I'm published, motherfucker. Now, I've been going off about, well, I had digital copies for a long time, and I got these published. I've been selling them, and this was something that, going back to that time that I was just talking about, this would have come in handy big time. A lot of what I had to do, which was really useful, was go through my giant Beatles Bible and play those songs over and over and over and over again and start to look for little pieces that I liked, you know? But not every book is made equal. That book is probably one of the better and more accurate ones that I've ever had, but I decided I was going to take a buttload of chord progression formulas and put them down in this book. And you can just go in, and there they are. Roman numerals, major, minor, whatever. There's no bars. There's no phrasing or anything like that. You can stretch it out as far as you want. You can play one chord for 2 bars. You can play all 4 chords in 1 bar. It doesn't matter. If you don't understand anything about theory, that's okay too. We've got step-by-step breaking down exactly how to use this book. And we also talk about major chord, major key chords of a major scale. We've got them written down. The other half of the book is minor chords. And then in the back, again, if you don't know shit about theory, look at that. Every chord in every key, major, minor, sharp keys, flat keys, whatever, they're written out and it's all there for you. So at any time, you can flip through this book. Let's say you're sitting, you got an afternoon, an hour, you want to get creative, but the blank page, it's hit you right in the face. It's staring at you, it's giving you the finger, and it's saying, you aren't writing shit today. What do? You use one of these prompts from this book, man. You don't have to wait around smelling your own butt for inspiration. Inspiration comes from where you find it. It doesn't have to hit you like a bolt of lightning. You control your body. You control your brain. Look for it. And guess what? You pull one of these bad boys out, start playing around with it. You match the chords to it from the back. You have a song. You play it however you want to play it. You pull whatever melody you feel inspired to pull out of it. This can be intros. This can be verses. This can be choruses, bridges, whatever. You can use every single one of these in a line if you want. And if you want to make a 3-hour-long Dream Theater jerk fest, it doesn't matter. This works for any style. This works for any level of musician, as long as you want to write and as long as you want to get better. 100 plus chord progression formulas. Hey Dan, tell them about where you can pick the book up. Oh, that's right. You can get the book right here at chordprogressionsbook.mfile.ca. You also get an opportunity on this sales page only to pick up the companion course, where I sit and go through every single chord progression, play them, play a few different versions of some of them, using different approaches to the chords and voice leading, and also talk about some of the ideas behind why the chord progressions work. you can go from being an imitator to an innovator in as much time as you're willing to put in. So get the book, stop being a sleeper. But for now, shameless plug time. It's not a shameless plug because it's my fucking show. I can buy my book. He's good. Buy my book. So what I want you to do now is to put your hands and your feet, and if you got long ears because you used to stretch them but you don't stretch them anymore, you can put your ears together as well for Chris Bruder.
I'm good.
All right, here it is. We are being joined with the lovely and talented and vivacious and multi-instrumentaled Chris Bruder, whom I don't know that friend is a good enough word for it. We've definitely familyed years and years ago.
4 years and years.
Yeah, this is a really nice reunion of musical minds here. I'm really glad you're taking the time out to come and chat with me here.
Stoked. Very happy to.
So I mean, you've probably been trying to keep busy somehow before, like, gigs have been kind of slowly trickling back. Like, besides Zelda, what have you been doing?
You know me too well. I've been trying to stay productive. I've been teaching music over Zoom, which, you know, is something, but it's weird going to nothing. Even jams, that only started happening kind of recently. So it was months of no music whatsoever. And it's weird because, like, you know, you'd think, oh, awesome, I have all this time to practice, but nope, doesn't work that way for whatever reason. When you're feeling down and when you're not seeing your friends and you're not jamming, you don't really feel like playing an instrument, even though you know deep down it's going to make you feel better. But
yeah, it's funny how being busy can kind of affect your practice motivation, because if you have to slot it in, then there's an urgency to kind of get it in.
Oh yeah,
because it's important, right? But if there's nothing to do, it can always be put off.
Yep.
I'll do it later. I don't feel like it. And then it's like, so like a big thing, this may shock and alarm you, but like I've been getting up at 6 a.m. and just like sneaking into the office to just practice and warm up and play a bit and just like try and do a bit of writing or whatever, just so that's like the first thing that gets done in the day. And then whatever work-wise gets done is good, but I feel like it's like I've got that most important thing that could be potentially sidetracked like so easily.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I find it comes in waves, right? Like if you're feeling like, you know what, I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock today and practice, then by God, you do it. You know, I found that, like, I go through phases where I'm like, I'm going to do all this. I'm going to write this crazy thing. And then there are periods of time where, like, I feel like I'm kind of coming out of a period of one of the not busy times, because I'm feeling the itch to do a lot more things now, which is nice. But yeah, it does come in waves, and I think you need to, as artists, we need to be easier on ourselves when we're in this part of the wave, right?
Yeah, it does, and trying to create like the best system, structure, or process for being musical, so that it takes any of the obstacles out of the way, because you don't want to make it harder on yourself than it already is, right? But like for me, with a baby who's like now walking and destroying everything, and he just is like running around and screaming, and if he gets in here, he's trying to hit all the keys on the keyboard and like, oh, what's this? I'll play with this like $500 mixer. This looks cool. And it's just like, oh my God, he's trying to shove a cracker in there. Yeah. But it's like, so I keep him out as much as possible, but that's one big reason for like getting up super early. Yeah. Right. So he's still sleeping. I get it done, and then I can hang out with him whenever. But but having like a really organized space where everything is out and you can just get it. You know, that's like been a big part of just being able to just be musical. You're like, I need this, I'll grab this. This is here. It's already set up. Like I don't have to spend 15 minutes of my precious music time trying to run cables to something or whatever. And
totally. It's like what I always tell when I'm like teaching guitar. I'm like, don't put it in your case. And you know, guitar technicians will say that's awful. But if I put my guitar in my case, I'm 3 times less likely to pick it up and play it for no reason.
Yeah, you know, psychologically, you see
I gotta do the thing. Whether it's like I'm walking by, I'm about to make a sandwich, and I'm like, I want to play a G chord.
Yeah,
you know, like, I want to play something cool. I want to play.
Yeah, these guitar hangers are probably one of the best investments that I've made in a long time. Because
absolutely, this tiny one right here is for my mandolin, and that's in its case, but that's because I brought it somewhere.
Yeah, I love. I just did the interview with Chelsea McBride yesterday.
Cool.
And we were talking about when you guys went on the tour with Socialist Night School. She was like, you know, it was crazy having to organize all these musicians, but you know, we didn't lose anybody. And I just kind of had this thought. I was like, you know, if you were going to leave anybody behind, it would probably be Bruder.
Wait, you meant we're leaving at 8 a.m.?
Just like standing in a field, like playing the mandolin, and there's all these butterflies like floating around.
Hey, wasn't I supposed to do something? Yeah, that was a good time, and Chelsea does such a great job at as we say, herding cats and just getting 20 creatives on the same page, and not only to be there at the same time, but also to work towards something. And at a really high level too. And, you know, you'd think that she'd have to be a hard ass about it, but she actually doesn't even need to, even though she has it in her. She can if she needs to, but she's got her shit so together that when you show up, you want to have your shit together. So it's like a lead by example kind of thing. So it's a great band to be a part of. Happy to be your, you know, friend and musical, you know, person.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic, that group, because she was saying like there's so much diversity, it's all over the spectrum, but everybody's come together in such a passionate way about specifically like the project. Like everyone wants that kind of like, you know, so you were a participant on that end, but you've also had to put together large scale projects like that, like for your final for Humber. That was an incredible project.
Yeah,
I was very lucky to be able to be in the audience and see that, where you wrote like a whole sweeping movement and telling a story with music. And it was how many pieces was that band?
That was 9 horns and then piano, bass, drums.
Yeah, that's, I mean, not as big band, but like anything that scale, it gets very complicated very fast. And trying to organize that kind of, you know, would you say that like having experience in one band helps you to manage the other, or having managed a band helps you to kind of be more productive? Like does it work both ways in that kind of way? Absolutely.
I think everything you do builds on what you've done last, and you don't even really realize it necessarily. Like, you know, I started playing with a group of guys back when I first started music school, and actually you offered us our first gig. And and
Squalloween,
like,
wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Squalloween. Yeah. The Alta Beelays and Post Downpour Squalling. Great show. And so I feel like so much of what I've been able to do has kind of come from just playing music with friends like that. And then, you know, because that happened, I was offered this and everything just kind of grows. And so, yeah, as far as like writing for large ensemble music, there's a lot of things that go into that. Like, you know, I've played in large ensembles, and so you get the vibe of you know, what you want to do. I think generally you just want to fully immerse yourself in anything you want to write. So if I'm writing for a large ensemble, I'm listening to that stuff nonstop. Like, it's for large ensembles, my go-tos are Maria Schneider and the Dave McMurdo Jazz Orchestra, which is like our hometown boys, but like world-class music.
I just got chills remembering that night it was like the celebration after Dave passed away, and Mike took up the mantle of leading the band, and we all hopped in the car and drove to the Rex, and it was just like, you know, people in tears kind of thing. It was very like emotional, and they were playing all these tunes, and that was, I just had chills thinking about that when you brought that up. That was a good time.
I remember it being so hot and sweaty in there. And I swear I heard Dave's voice when people were talking over a bass solo. Shut up, you dicks. Just like, yeah, Dave. Yeah, Dave.
He was a really, really good teacher. You were in the third year jazz harmony with me, right? When we did.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because you were there for Takedown Move, right?
Oh,
yeah. But it was a really awesome experience, because usually in jazz harmony previous, it was a lot of like textbook, let's learn, you know, here's the rules, and then there's this. And then by third year, it was very free form, talking about like, here's a specific song type. Let's kind of analyze it a bit and see what you can come up with in that style. Mm-hmm. That was a really, really cool kind of way to approach it. We were talking about like having constraints in songwriting, how it can kind of open up creative pathways for you and stuff. And before that, you know, it was very project. You know, here's an assignment, write a tune, it's got to do this, whatever. If it turns out good, cool, you did a good job. And if it doesn't, it's still kind of just an assignment. But
I think
third year was a big one for that, because it was a lot more open and very creative, and it was awesome to kind of have that experience. I really, really enjoyed that.
Well, I always tell my students, you gotta learn the rules and then break them. Like you don't deserve to break them until you've learned them. And that's sort of, first and second year, these are the pillars of, you know, music and theory and songwriting and whatever. And then I was grateful. Yeah. You get to third year and it's like, okay, now go. And it's like, it's nice because then you're faced with the blank page, which is probably the hardest thing that any artist looks at. And then you learn tricks like working within a box, like you were just talking about. Like that's so huge for me, because if I'm just staring at a blank page or like a keyboard and I just, you know, I'm like, I want to write something good. It's so hard to do that. Whether like, so if I say, okay, I want to write a song that's kind of like this song, then that's a box I've put myself into. And then that song will probably end up sounding nothing like that other song. Yeah. But it's inspired by, and it allowed me to choose the option that I thought was more like the thing that I was going for. Mm-hmm. And actually talk about third year. I remember Pat Collins, one of our professors, amazing Canadian bass player. He asked us all to write 30-minute tunes. And that doesn't mean write a song that's 30 minutes long. It means you have 30 minutes to write a tune. And this is just like, you know, you don't have to write lyrics or anything. It's just like, you know, 16 bars, pick some chords, throw a melody over it. But the idea is that if you only have 30 minutes to write a song, you have to go with your first idea. You don't have the luxury of self-doubt and like doubting an idea. Right. And so what it ends up doing, it's like a training ground for taking that first idea that's not very good. Maybe it is, but generally that's the idea that you're like, eh. Yeah. But over the course of the next few minutes, if you have to commit to that, your musicality is going to turn that into something cool. Right. And it's going to be pretty cool. So I remember we did a couple 30-minute tunes, and then the next week he's like, okay, write a 15-minute tune. And we're like, that's impossible. And I think I just wrote like 8 bars and then put a little melody over it. And I still bring that song to gigs to this day. It's one of my favorites. And people who like musicians who I play with, it's like a little simple tune called Banana Muffins. And everybody seems to love it. It's a nice little thing, because it's just, I never would have, you know, and it took 15 minutes to write. I think because I wrote it out, I gave myself 20. But yeah, it's a very valuable thing to learn. So I'd encourage anybody to just try putting, that's an easy box to put yourself in, is a time constraint. Yeah. And so whether that's choose 4 bars and put a little melody over it. But the idea is to not judge your first idea, and just to work with your first idea and turn that into something cool, which
That's
is
actually really interesting, because a big thing in a lot of just like ask, comment, like ladders or whatever, where I just throw out questions and stuff and trying to figure out like, what do people have trouble with their songwriting, and finishing songs is probably one of the biggest ones that comes up. And so, the idea of like, let's work on this, let's try and do this, but like a time constraint. Like obviously we, when it was school, we had that because it was a deadline, giving yourself a deadline, but like being like, okay, you're going to sit down and you're going to have 30 minutes. Like, fuck, I got to start doing that. That's actually really smart.
Honestly, it's unreal. It's super cool.
Because it makes you flex your musical and your composer muscle, really.
Well,
because it's
more than flex, it allows you
more.
to trust it. That's a big thing, because it's and maybe it's just me, but I don't think so. Like I'll have like 20 ideas before I have one that I like. Whereas if I just practice taking that first idea and just sitting with it for 5 minutes, playing around with it, it'll morph into something cool. Like we're musicians for a reason. Like we play music, and we won't settle for something that sucks.
It'll get music out of anything. You know?
For sure.
I had a song that I wrote, and the rhythm came from when I was walking, and the keys in my pocket and the zippers jangling. It ended up being like in 7/8, like against like the walking. So there was like a 4/4, but then there was like a 7 against it or something like that. And I remember like writing it something for it, and was like, that music is everywhere if you know where to find it. You know, so it's like that's a really strong point to actually bring out of this, is that trusting and being able to like, there's no bad ideas. Is such a big
just ideas that need a little more love.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just as an offshoot, I don't know if anybody listening to this is wanting to play odd time signatures, but the bona fide way to learn how to play odd time signatures is to use your feet. Left, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh,
7,
yeah.
1, 2. And just as you're walking somewhere, just be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. And if you can feel an odd time signature over that, like your feet are 4/4, then you can play over the bar lines. You can play around with odd time signatures. That is the bona fide way to get good at odd time signatures.
Yeah, that's so funny that you said that. I kind of would unconsciously do that when I was distance running. I used to run like long distance and like cross country, and keeping a solid rhythm of my pace wouldn't always like be in 4/4 with my breathing. So it's like having that going at the same time and being like, I gotta get this next guy, I gotta beat him, but like my breathing needs to stay pretty solid and keep my heart rate at a reasonable level so I don't pass out. But yeah, I that's funny that you brought that up. It just kind of memory kicked off the shelf there.
Yeah, for sure.
So I mean, you've been playing for probably most of your life, right? Like you were playing, you were in bands in high school, but were you playing instruments before then, or were you just kind of picking up
so I started playing piano when I was 5, and probably guitar like when high school hit, like grade 8 or grade 9 probably.
The guitar age.
Yeah, totally. And I stopped playing piano, all but stopped playing piano in high school, and just played the guitar, and I'm grateful for it, even though I'm, maybe 4 years behind where I would be on piano, but it's so great having another instrument. And I tell that to my students too. I say, pick up another instrument, because like, we say I'm their piano teacher. I'm like, you have to practice, because I'm coming here every week. But so like, it's almost like, when you're really focused on an instrument, it's almost not your hobby anymore. It's like something deeper, especially when you start to be a professional and have to put like, your livelihood in that camp. Then it's not really a hobby anymore. But having another instrument that you don't put those pressures on allows music to still be a hobby, which is wonderful.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I remember a really weird introspective moment while after partying with Bright Light Social Hour, which was that was such a great show, and they came and hung out with us late into the evening, and a couple of good old boys from Texas, and we're showing them a good time in Hamilton, Ontario.
Yeah.
And Jack, he was talking about how like they've been working so hard and music had become such a job. Like it was just, you show up, you play the show, and that was it. That was all it was. And he was like kind of amazed that he's like, you guys just played a crazy show. You played your faces off, and what do? You come back here and you're still all playing music and all jamming,
Beatles all together,
Yeah, and it was like a weird kind of like.
I think that was an aha moment for him. I think it was like you could see that like he was really in the trenches of like a tour and like a band, and like
they're a hard working band.
Yeah,
they do not stop. It's crazy.
And it's easy to lose sight of that when you're really focusing on something. And it's good though, because you need to have those focus moments, like in order to improve on an instrument or to get a band off the ground, like you need to really do that. But it's nice to know that music's there for you to just have sing-alongs with your friends. And if your friends don't like sing-alongs, get new friends.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a bit of a revolving door on people who weren't quite on the inside yet. When we were all hanging out and partying, and it was like we would jam before the show, we would play at the show, and then we come back and play a show after the show. And it was just always music, and there'd be people that would come and be like, is this it? Like, you guys are all just playing music? We're gonna go.
And that's cool, because they've got their own things, I'm sure they do, but for us there's just that one way. And so the people that stayed forever.
Yeah. It was because there was always that one person you could see like being let out, and they're like, but I want
yeah. And it wasn't always like electric instruments. It was often acoustic instruments where everybody could sing along too. Like, and tell me you don't know the lyrics to Obla Di Obla Da, or like na 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 na.
And if you don't,
everybody knows those lyrics.
It's like 3 a.m. and everyone's pretty hammered. Like, just go with it.
Yeah.
And it was a letting loose, which I think was like a really big part of the community that was around the band and the music. Like, it was very intertwined.
Yeah.
All things were kind of one.
Yeah.
It wasn't like here's the people and they play music and whatever. Everyone was very much a part of it, whether they played instruments or not, and they were happy to be there because it was like just like a pillar of energy, just always flowing, and always like creativity and positivity and just having fun. Like, there's so many after party pictures where it's just us with the biggest smiles on our faces. Well, probably for some other reasons, but like
but mainly for the music and the people.
Joy.
You know what I mean? And that's why, like, after party, sure, people are drinking, but like it was never about that. Like, honestly, it kind of took the role of like church in our lives.
It did.
We would come together for community and to take part in something that was bigger than us, which was, making music together. And like, just singing, whether you're good at it or not, just moving air through your throat hole with intention, it just lifts your soul up. And I remember, I still do whenever I make music with friends, whether it's in a rehearsal or just like with whoever, like singing a Beatles tune or whatever, you feel full, and that's one thing that I've realized going without it for so long. Everything was a little bit gray for lots of reasons. It's a weird time right now, but but I remember when I started jamming again and getting together with people again, not a whole lot of people, but I have like I see the band now and I see a few other people, and so we sing songs, and it's just like, oh right, like the world's a little brighter now. It's and that's one thing that it's easy to take for granted when you're a musician, but like something that like we have at our disposal at all times.
Yeah. It's a really, it's like a gift, a power, a tool. Like, it's all these things kind of wrapped into one, because it's like, you don't have to be good at it to have it make you feel good.
Yeah.
And again, if you do it enough, you get better at it, right? Like, it's like, if you want to sing, you can sing. Like, you just focus on it and do it. And it's such a, it's weird, like the healing power of like singing and stuff. Like,
I've been
and for everyone involved. And
yeah, I've been sick with the flu, played an inspired set of music with great musicians, and the flu was gone by the end of that set. And I'm like, not bullshitting you. It's happened a couple times, like body aches, chills, like I shouldn't have come to this gig. And then it's like gone, and sometimes for good.
I've used that a couple times.
Yeah. It's like, wow, okay, that is some sort of magic. And it just the way it reacts with your body and your mind and your soul, it lifts you up and it makes you stronger. And I remember I use this analogy quite a lot, but it's, if you go to, like a tribe in Central Africa or, somewhere outside of Western culture, the whole idea is everybody sings and dances. And so you go there and you're like, oh, I'm not a singer, I'm not a dancer. They're like, sorry, like, yeah. What do you mean you're not
aren't you alive?
Yeah. And so it's not this delineation of musician and non-musician. And I guess it's easier for musicians to say, no, we're the same. But like, it really is. If like you are in an audience and you are like in the moment and hanging on every note like the musicians are, there's really not a whole lot of difference between participating as a musician and participating as an audience member if you are locked in with that. And so that's why like you can be an audience member in a show and still come away from that feeling the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's been many a show that, whether I was on stage or whether I was in the audience, just walking away feeling like, oh, wow. Yeah. Like, that was so good. Yeah. And it's like an exorcism or a spring cleaning for the soul. Absolutely. Like Hortonports was the idea behind it. It was a very silly, made up word, but I decided to turn my birthday into a big psychedelic holiday. And because it's at the end of March, we've all been through a brutal gray Canadian winter and we needed a really good spring pick-me-up. Mm-hmm. So there was some kind of big party or a concert and everybody just get crazy and be as crazy as you want. And it was like a shake out the cobwebs and get the demons out kind of thing. And
I remember the very first Hortonports, there was a collection of us that just, because it was just a funny word. I mean, you're the mayor of funny words, but that was one of the funny. And so you're like, I'm gonna like throw my birthday party and it's gonna be Hortonports. And so I remember around the school hallways, just be like, Hortonports, and I was like, what the hell are they talking about? And then eventually it just grew, and then eventually the posters went up and everybody's like, oh, Hortonports. And then it became this massive event. God, I miss massive events, but it was a truly wonderful night. And then it's taken on so many different iterations over the years. But people need an excuse people are always looking for excuses to have a good time and to do that.
It's true. I was getting into marketing before I really knew it with stuff like that, because like it was the mystique. It was something so silly. And like, I had people straight up like, there was one kid whose locker was near me and he was a bit of a dink. And I was asking him, I was like, have you got your tickets yet? And he's like, I'm not going to that. And then on the day of, he was like, do you have any tickets left? Like, the last two, man, like.
Nice.
But that's it. Like, you don't want to miss out.
Yeah.
And then you go and you're just like, this is fucking crazy. Yeah. They're shaving their mustaches on stage. Like, what is this?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the event. It's the experience. I mean, there is the musical part of it, obviously, that's playing music, but what is it that you're going to do that's going to separate them from just sitting at home and listening to the record, right? It's like, I went and created a memory. That's a really important part of like the show and the entertainment. And, there's debate on how much it can go in one way or the other with people like Kiss or like Lady Gaga or whatever, but it doesn't take the fact away that like the performance is still an art in itself, you know. And I think there's a really good marriage of that has to be accomplished.
And people in the audience, in any audience, they are just waiting to be told how much fun they're supposed to be having. Like, honestly, like sometimes it's a somber mood and sometimes that's great for a show, but like the band sets the tone for the show. So the audience came to experience something, and then it's really up to the performers of like what the vibe is. So, you know, if you're having an absolute blast, that's infectious. That sets the tone for the audience. Okay, this is how much fun we're supposed to be having. Cool, let's light it up.
It gives them permission.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, like you play a song or whatever, and then the go-to line, like you ask them if they're having a good time. Yeah. And they're like, yeah. And it's never good enough.
Never good enough.
Never be satisfied. That they can always
that first
do better.
one, you're like offended at you're like, excuse me. Like, I thought this is the classic Dan Weiss. I'm sorry, I didn't realize this was a library.
Oh yeah. I miss being on stage because as much as I like to be like curled up in a ball being anxious about the world, making a complete spectacle out of myself is just something I really enjoy. It's like when you hear that Sacha Baron Cohen considers himself a private person. But it's because he's in character.
Yeah.
Right? He goes and he does these crazy things, but it's a character. It's not him.
Yeah.
And there's this separation. And
well, yeah, you definitely had a stage persona, and you definitely knew how to work a crowd. Like, we would play shows, like crazy shows, and to like a lot of wild, crazy people. And then it just became a thing where you knew that was going to be the vibe of the show. And so I'm thinking particularly of our run at the Baltimore House for those few years, performing every month or two. And just a sea of people, and just like, I still have people like, you know, I'll know them for like, you know, a couple months, and then I'll kind of bring up the band or whatever, and they're like, you're in that band? I saw that band at Baltimore House, and that was the craziest night I've had, you know?
And that was
like again, that's not like, that's us doing our job, but it's so much bigger than just what we're doing, right? It becomes this collective of, you know, people taking part as the audience, you know? And, you know, we could be doing that to nobody, and it's no big deal. It's really less about what we're doing and more just about like watching a wonderful movement start to happen of like-minded people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We were really, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we were doing in the rebuilding the foundations of the band and starting to work on the album, like I'm trying to learn or rebuild and teach those lessons that we were doing about what we were doing right, about like trying to have a focus, trying to define like the values, like what's our mission.
Yeah.
You know, our mission was to be like, okay, like when you listen to this, you're just going to feel good and want to party and want to be like, I want to be there. And if I can't be there, I want to start something here. You know, that was kind of like the vibe.
Yeah.
And that was like the guiding principle. And like we had so many meetings, like me and you, we'd go to the judge and we'd have our notebooks and a couple beers and just be like, okay, so what do we want people to feel? What do we want people to think? Who is the exact person that we're speaking to? And that was probably one of the most important things that we did without really realizing it.
Well, that album we made, Weaponized Magic, I view it as such a win. I probably hadn't listened to it for like a couple years, and Jordan just put it on in the car and we listened to it twice, and I was like, holy shit. Like, it was such a win because we had an intention, we had a creative vision, and then we realized it. Like, that album was exactly what we wanted it to be. It was a balls to the wall rock and roll album, of course, with lots of other influences that naturally come through our songwriting, but it's such a snapshot in time of a scene, and like it's sort of a concept album, and I just like I am to this day still so proud of that album.
Absolutely. There was no compromise.
Yeah.
I don't feel like there was any point where it was like, we'll just let it go, whatever. Like we really tried to hone in the details and get exactly what it was that we wanted.
Yeah.
And that was so much easier to do because we had a vision, we had an end goal, and trying to be like. Some of the
things that helped us, I think, were having a team that keeps us accountable. Because I know me personally, I will do whatever for somebody else, and I'll go above and beyond for somebody else, but for whatever reason I will not do it for myself. So having people to keep you accountable, people with common goals, regular meetings, all that stuff, but also assembling the right team. We got a producer and engineer kind of combo that like would stay up with us all night and like record stuff and like really understood the vision we were going for. And that's why, because I mean, you can have a million great intentions and you can, write amazing songs and the album still falls flat if the people on the other side making the album, like your producers and engineers and all that, aren't sharing in that same vision of yours.
Yeah, so many stories of like conflict in that kind of way, where it's like the album has a producer that the record label just sends in.
Yeah.
They're like, take care of this. You run the show, even though it's this band that's already made albums. And what a sad state to be in, like to not have control.
Yeah. The producer's only job is to realize the artist's creative vision. That's it. And so like the idea is that the producer's there to bridge the gap between the technical album making process and the songwriting whatever of the band into like this streamlined thing. And if a producer has another thing in mind than the band's creative vision, well, the first thing is the producer helps the band realize their creative vision as far as like actually figuring out what it is, and then realizing the creative vision as in like making it real. So it's the right team will make or break the album.
Absolutely. Having Josh Hanf and Phil Spencer, they put so much of their extra time in to like drive down from Toronto and come and meet with us and talk with the whole band, and we would spout out ideas, we would talk about inspiration, and that really was like set up a lot of the technical aspects, like where should we record it, what has the best kind of console for this, or the best kind of equipment, what are we going to need, and it was a really helpful thing to have, because I mean this was the biggest album project that we had done up to that point. And we needed some guidance on that, even though we were like, we've been in the studio a couple times before, like it's probably fine.
And also like we didn't like out of the gate have a creative vision for this album, because like we're all jazz school nerds, but we all love prog and we all love video game music and we all love whatever, but in our hearts is rock and roll, so like at the end of it took us a while to realize exactly what we wanted, and we wanted all these songs, whether they were traditionally rock and roll songs or not, to have that sort of spirit and vibe. And so that took a long time of conversations and whatever to really hone in on it. It can be really hard working with other people. We were blessed that we had a group of like-minded individuals, and that makes it easier. And in some respects, having a dictator makes it easier too, but then it all falls on one person's shoulders, and I'm not sure I'm cut out for that.
You took a lot of that process on, and like,
I was able to lean on the group, right? It was, I maybe took like project manager role for a lot of that. But it was certainly not, a me thing. It was all of us putting, lots of time and energy and money, and it wasn't all roses. I mean, we were at each other's throats a few times, but all over like we're going for the same goal, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think this song will be better if we do this. I think this song will be better if we do this. And I think the process that we would always go by and still always will is, try it one way, try it the other, take a vote. And like, it's gotten to the point where like, I'm very happy to be wrong now. Like I will always play devil's advocate, then we'll try it both ways. And I'm like, cool, now I know. Like,
yeah, at least you know.
Yeah.
So you had a pretty big hand in the production process of like your own album. I kind of want to talk a bit about producing the Infernal Machine, because doing that project was kind of a precursor to, okay, I think we can really do this with our album, right? You guys were still in school. For those that don't know, it was Earth's Yellow Sun, prog metal with horns.
Yeah.
And these guys are just insanely talented musicians, but that was a big school project at the end of the year, right? You helped produce and arrange and all that shit. And just kind of talk a bit about that process, because
one of my best buddies and my producing partner, Josh Hamp, who helped with Weaponized Magic, his metal band, Earth's Yellow Sun, his vision was always to, metal's bigger than screamo. Metal's bigger. Like it's such an artistic and awesome way to create music. And so his idea was this 20-minute epic EP, 5 movements, all instrumental, that told a story. So what my job was as the producer was to help him realize that creative vision. So we were story writing as much as we were music writing. And so the idea was, the story was about a futuristic society that builds a giant robot. And over the course of the 5 movements, eventually the robot turns on humanity, and then there's a big war. And we thought, okay, how can we tell this story through music? And the idea was the metal instruments would represent technology, or the robot, whatever you want to call it. And then acoustic instruments would represent humanity. So we had acoustic fiddle leads, acoustic piano. We had a master tabla player come in. There was an 8-voice choir that I arranged, a 5-piece horn section, all on this metal record. And it just turned out to be one of the things that I'm most proud of. My job for that, it took about a year of my life, and it was like a 25-minute EP. And once you listen to it, it's dense and crazy, and every single little part, every single riff was justified by the story. So talk about working inside of a box. That allowed us to really choose what was going to happen. And so now, because we have every little riff tells a story, there's a comic book on its way. It's almost done. It's been in the works for a long time.
Man, that's been such a long time coming.
It's expensive. And so my job wasn't necessarily to write the riffs. That was Josh's job. Mine was to say, okay, we need a riff here that, says, the robot's retreating and coming back later, right? So it was 5 movements. The first one is the building of the robot, which has this big triumphant ending. And then the second one is when the robot goes out and does all the people's bidding. The third one, betrayal, where the robot realizes, oh no, these humans are the enemy. Number 4 is a beautiful acoustic calm before the storm, and movement 5 is the war between robot and humanity. So you can imagine it's a literal war between acoustic instruments and electric instruments. And so my role wasn't in the principal writing, but my role was I did a lot of arranging for like the horns and the choir and stuff, and wrote some melodies and wrote some shreds and stuff. But that was a cool project. Go listen.
So that's a really important distinction that you made, where it's like there was the principal writer, and your job was to kind of pull things out or kind of guide them in a certain direction. Because I think you've made a lot of like really declarative statements about like, this is what a producer's job really should be. And whether that's you as the artist or somebody else, it's something that really does need to happen in the writing process to kind of bring more out. And I almost feel like that's something that's kind of skipped over a lot of times when you talk about like writing music and composition, it's one person sitting in the room with a piano or a guitar, and then the song's finished and they're like, okay, cool, I'm done. You know, like,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's almost like a, you know, production can be from like a revision standpoint. It can be like, you know, reworking something or remixing something so that it's like updated. If you wrote a song 10 years ago or something and you go back, and being able to have those skills in mind to be like, I know more, I can clean this up a bit better. And I think that's a really important kind of musical hat that doesn't always get pulled off the shelf, because it's almost like people don't really know that it's there, or like what the goal is.
Yeah, what
almost
exactly
like
it is,
mastering.
Just about to bring that up.
The mystery of what is mastering? I don't know, but it's expensive, so we better do it. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's true. Like, you better do it. But I'm actually kind of figuring out, if you can believe it.
What mastering is?
Yeah. I can't tell you on recording, or they'll kill me. They'll kill my whole family if I tell anybody what mastering is.
Yeah. Well, what I always tell people about mastering is it's like laminating your recording so that it sounds the same on every set of speakers.
Yes.
Essentially, just two things. It's and I mean, I might be talking at my ass right now as a piano player, but it's generally EQ. So like if one song is like super bassy, it just kind of like puts it back up there, and then peak limiting so that if any part is like really loud, it'll just keep it kind of on the same level. And it takes really incredible ears and really great gear to do it well.
Yeah.
And so that can sort of make or break your recording too. And it sucks because like I kind of know what it is, but I'm not good at like judging a good master, versus a bad master. It's You got to put your trust in somebody, unless you're a total audiophile and can tell yourself.
I sat and watched Ruben Ghost just like do the whole album, and I have no idea what happened. I watched. I know
it sounded good.
It sounded really good. I'm not sure what he had. He might have had something, because it was like an actual console. Like, he wasn't working with. He might have had something similar to like what they have in those like Abbey Road plugins that I use. They're really sick, but like, it looks familiar. Like, the console was just like all these really old school looking knobs and like meters and everything. And I was just staring at it like, did you get this from an alien crash? Like, what is this? Like, I've seen mixing boards, but what's happening here? It's this amazing mystery. But yeah, is there anything that's coming up, going on, something you want to plug? Where do you want to direct some eyes?
Well, I played piano on a vocal jazz album, the Aubrey Wilson Quartet. That was supposed to come out, mid-COVID. I'm not sure when that's coming out now, but keep your eyes and ears open. So myself and the bass player that Dan and I have played with for years, we are in this jazz quartet. And we did a lot of modern takes on old jazz standards. So a vocalist, bass, drummer, and myself on piano. So that should be coming out at some point. And other than that, I've just been, making music for no reason by myself and trying to do that a whole lot more. I've got my little studio here, and there's, guitars hanging and stuff. And, and so it's, I've been, putting little things up on SoundCloud, like, EDM beats and rock songs, and just
it's so fun.
Reason.
It's so much fun.
I think it's so important to just make music for no reason, especially if you have a little home studio, and if you don't like figure it out, it's not that expensive and it's not that hard to do. Grab yourself Logic Pro and a little audio interface and just plug in and go.
Some of the simplest stuff is like free.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's no excuse. Just do it. Just do it for you, for the children.
For the children. And even if you don't have like a little keyboard, you can use your actual like keyboard on your computer to like type in like little notes and see what happens.
Yeah.
And
it's really important.
a lot of those softwares come with like, you know, entire banks. You can have strings, you can have whatever, and just create. And everybody seems to be, you know, the people that didn't have little home studios seem to now, because there's nothing else to do. So, you know, you can fly stuff off to friends, have them, you know, put guitar over it or drums or something. And I've been looking to get into that a lot more too.
Yeah, that's been really cool to see, just people like throwing up a drum track and then like people stacking. I saw that video that you guys were all doing where it was just like people adding on and on and on to this simple video.
With Tom on drums, our buddy from Come Together. And so he just did a funky beat, and then somebody did a bass line, somebody did whatever. I added some keys, and I had to learn how to do iMovie for that, and I mostly did it. But
there's a learning curve with editing and stuff, but once you get it, it's so much fun. I love doing it. That being said, if anybody wants to edit like hours of footage,
you're welcome.
Yeah. Well, I think that about takes us to time.
Cool.
But if there's anything else you want to, like some final nuggets of wisdom that you want to drop about anything music, like an aha moment that you had that changed your life with music. Like
I've had a couple of those, mainly because I've had really good teachers. But I remember one time I asked Mike Malone, this wonderful teacher and trumpet player. I was kind of at a crossroads, and I was like, hey man, like, should I be focusing more on piano and more on composition? Because I don't want to like spread myself too thin. And he just looked at me and smiled, and he's like, that's the same thing. He's like, the better you get at your instrument, the better you're going to be at composition. So just keep plugging away, and you'll be good. Also, another aha moment that I just think of that just aha'd me right now. I remember being in music school, and you know, always being really supportive of my peers, but there's a dark little gremlin in the back of everybody's mind that if you're competing with somebody in some way, you kind of hope they screw up a little bit, so that maybe you'll get that gig or whatever. And you know, I wouldn't let that you know, affect my decision making or the way I treated people or whatever, but it was still there. You know, you still, you know, when you're competitive with somebody or rivals with somebody, you know, they say it's like, you know, like swallowing poison and hoping somebody else dies.
Yeah.
It's just gonna mess with you. And I remember one day, I was watching somebody, like this really great pianist that was also in the program, and I made the conscious choice to like genuinely root for him. And when he kicked ass, I was just so happy, and I felt like this weight off of me that like I didn't even realize I was carrying, and I never looked back. And so it's helped me so much, because now instead of having those weird kind of relationships with people where you're kind of competing, you know, even if it's only like playfully, those relationships I find now turn into relationships where you're learning together and you're learning from each other, and you can lift each other up. And whether you're a composer or a musician or whatever, I think that is so valuable, because there's enough room for us all. Right.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a big aha moment for me, choosing, and it's a choice, right? So
yeah, absolutely. The stone you carry is your choice, and you know, you don't really have to carry one at all. You can just be happy for everybody and work hard, and it's only going to benefit you and your music.
Yeah.
So, well, you know what? I need to get hosed off because I'm dripping with sweat. But thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding music, and just, I like that it's just, I get to have conversations about this stuff with people, because these are the kind of things that would we would cover maybe one or two of these things in a regular conversation, but being able to actually schedule people in for about an hour or so and have a concentrated, let's just go music.
Yeah.
I'm super looking forward to the rest of these conversations I'm going to get to have with people. This is an awesome thing that I get to do. So thank you so much for coming, and
you're welcome.
I'll be sure to put up
I'll do this
whatever with the
tomorrow.
episode. Yeah. And there's no saying that I won't have you on again, and we'll have a paywall And then if you pay us $100, you get to hear the uncensored Alto Beelays after party stories. All right. Well, and with that, we bid you adieu. Thanks so much to Bruder, and thanks for all of you for listening. And we'll see you next time.
All right.
Eyebrow power.
We're back. And as you can see, I have a stowaway. Internet, this is our cat. His name is Benson. We call him Bence. And he wouldn't stop scratching at the door, so I figured I might as well let him in. And he pretty much does what he wants. So I wasn't going to make him leave. Once the segment with the interviews was over, when I get to put my feet up, make some steamed ice, and just let my cares float away. But now, let's talk about a few critical songwriting tips that every musician and songwriter needs to know. This is some important... I'm trying to think of another word for tip. I think I need to invest in a thesaurus, I guess. I don't know. But just some simple advice around better songwriting habits and work habits. I feel like that's a kind of a thing that doesn't always get tackled when we're talking about songwriting. I mean, if you start getting more serious about it, obviously that's one thing that people will try and push. But if you're getting started with it, you want to know some important tips to escape being stuck as an unheard musician without releasing music that no one will hear, then you need to open up your ears and clean out your eyes, because we're going to take your songwriting to the next level. Songwriting tip number 1, create a space to write and make music consistently. You want to make music and write songs for a living. Pet the kitty. You have to treat it like a job. This means getting up and going to work every day and doing everything you can to improve so that you can gain status, influence, and independence. It's a no-brainer here, but the more you do something, the better you get at it. If you write music and practice every single day, even for a small window, you will make monumental progress. You can't expect to wait around for inspiration or the time to be, air quotes, just right, because music is a craft. So be deliberate with it. Take it seriously, and it will reward you. You need to assess your daily schedule. When you write your average daily activities down in blocks of time, you may start to realize that you have a lot more time to work on these things than you thought you did. You may also notice, if you are truly being honest with yourself, that large chunks of the day are being filled with things that are just a colossal waste of time. If you actively block out at least 1 hour every day for concentrated songwriting, you'll find that you will get more done than you thought you could in far less time than you thought you would need. Bing. Songwriting tip number 2. Developing a process for being creative or for writing. Which really, I mean, they should be the same thing, but the time has come for you to sit down and write your music. So how do you approach it? Do you spin around in your chair for a good 15 minutes waiting for something to hit you? Do you sit down only to realize that nothing is where it's supposed to be and you have to find everything, and by the time you get started to try and think of an idea, most of your time has been wasted? The less friction or potential obstacles that are in your way, the more likely you are to be productive and fruitful with your efforts. Working out a system or a process can really help you with this. How easy is it for you to go and take a shower, finish your morning routine, get through a workout at the gym, go to the store and buy the essentials you buy every single time you go there? There are steps you take in a certain order, in a specific place, where everything you need is right there, ready to be accessed by you. The efficient design of the system helps the effectiveness of you in the process. Designate a specific space to use for your writing. Being able to get into work mode is easy when all of your tools are in the same spot. Limit your distractions. Like this guy, this asshole, Senior Kitty. Limit your distractions. He's slapping me with his tail. One moment, I gotta let him out. Never work with cats. They're so unprofessional. Limit your distractions and do what you can to have everything you need ready to go well before you sit down to work, not when you decide to work. Do you want to spend 15 minutes of your fleeting work time changing guitar strings or looking for paper to write on? Think about how you actually approach your writing when you sit down to do it. How much of that time is just pissed away noodling? While inspiration is nice, it doesn't have to listen to you ever. You don't call the shots. So you can't wait around to be struck all the time by a brilliant bolt of lightning. Have some kind of idea or prompt that you can use to jumpstart your creative process. The work starts much faster when there is an objective to complete or a problem that you have to solve. Keep a journal of your ideas. This way, when you sit down to work but aren't sure of what it is you're going to work on, you have a whole collection of ideas to choose from and to develop further into a complete masterpiece. And I'm waiting on you, Tim. Yeah. Bet you didn't think I was paying attention. Tim. So, songwriting tip number 3. Connecting with an accountability partner or group. You aren't the only songwriter or musician taking on the monumental task of creating something new. finding people just like you should be a matter of priority. Writing music can be an incredibly lonely endeavor, but it doesn't have to be. Honest encouragement and feedback from those who understand the songwriting struggle is priceless. But more importantly, if you set out to write a song today, but you are the only person who knows, and you didn't bother to do it because you ate a whole pizza to yourself and fell asleep, then relatively little harm is done. Without consequence, you can feel free to shirk all of your responsibility, but you have to be your own boss to get the music finished. There are plenty of groups for songwriters out there, but they do tend to be pretty spammy and have little to no substance. That's why I created our Facebook group. It's called MFile, Songwriting Secrets for Advancing Musicians. It is closely monitored. We don't allow any spam or weird shit. And it's created to build a community of musicians who want to make progress. So if you look up Songwriting Secrets for Advancing Musicians, or I think it's, what is it? Facebook.com/groups/MFile SSAM. But, you know, just type in Songwriting Secrets or MFile, you'll find it. And then you get to hang with a lot of really cool people. And we want to get as many people in there that want to learn and want to improve so that they can all improve each other and inspire each other to keep progressing. Show off your wins, ask questions, get advice. You know, it's all there for you. So, that is how they say in Louisiana, that. So up next, we've got a really cool concept that you may notice with your ear without noticing that you're noticing it or that it's happening. This is a very strange happening concept, idea. It's almost spooky how it works. But what we're going to talk about is doot, doot. Wrong one. That's not what we're talking about. Beep, tonal gravity. And it's a big deal. In a melodic context, it's very important when writing a melody line or a hook. But it does go further than that. Because if you're building chords, but you're having the notes in the chords move around, whether through inversions or you're using like suspensions or extensions or anything like that, create some movement while you're on one chord. Tonal gravity works in a chordal sense with the intervals in the chord. And then even beyond that, tonal gravity works in a chord progression or harmony context. And I'll show you a bit about what I mean. So, tonal gravity. What the hell is it? Why did it forget my birthday? Well, as you know, or maybe you don't, when it comes to a Western tonal system arranging each note in a scale, we have 7 notes, and then the first note repeats again as the octave. So any scale that is a diatonic scale, which means like based on the major scale or major scale concept of organizing notes, we have 1 through 7 and then 8 again. You can use this to talk about the intervals in a chord or a scale, or the chords you can choose from when you're making a chord progression in a certain key. So now that we know, we're dealing with 1 through 8. Boop, beep, bop, boop, beep. So what comes next? Well, 1 is obviously a very important note. That's our tonal center, our root of a chord, our key center, and 8 obviously is the same thing. 5, because of its distance, its location, it is almost like the partner of the 1. So 1, 5, and 8 are very much the stability. They hold the tonal center in place. Now, any of these numbers, doesn't matter which one you want, everything wants to flow to either the 1 or the 8. Just like all water wants to flow downhill, everything needs to be resolved by getting to the 1 or getting to the 8. So, 2 wants to reach 1, and it's very close, so it can do that. Because it's so close, it does create a bit of tension, because after this key center is established, once you play a chord, play a note, or just give the vibe that, okay, we're in the key of C, you play a D, it wants to go there. It's the path of least resistance, and it's so close. It's like an electron. It really wants to be resolved. So, 3 wants to go to 1, obviously. It can jump right there. It's quite comfortable doing it. As a chord tone, it's almost like there's a really nice fluid path between how each of these notes vibrate that they can transfer back and forth pretty seamlessly. Although you can definitely go from 3 to 2, and then 2 wants to go to 1. Now, 4, this character. He, or she, or they want to go to 3. And I don't blame them. 3 seems to be a universally juicy note. Really tasty. And when in doubt, hit a 3rd. It's good advice, really. Trust me. So 4 wants to go to 3. And when you're at 3, you want to go to 1. That's just how she goes. So you have those choices, obviously, we've said before. Now, 5, this character. 5 is somewhat stable because of the fact that 1, 8, and 5 are fundamentals of the tonal center, the key center. So when you're at 5, it kind of feels at rest temporarily. So that creates a pretty strong identity for itself within all of these. It does feel at rest temporarily, but it does want to reach 1 or 8. How the hell you get there is totally up to you. So, what's next? We've got 6. 6 is now on the other side of 5. 5 has that really odd sense of a split because it's somewhat stable within this framework. So because 6 is on the other side of 5, just like if you put too much weight on a teeter-totter, it'll start tipping the other way. It wants to go to 8. It wants to go up. to the octave. It can jump right to 8, but it can also pass through 7, 6, 7, 8. Beep boop. There you go. And of course, 7, much like 2, is so close to being resolved. It just wants to be done with it. It wants that resolution. So it creates a lot of tension and should be used as such to create tension, interest, drama, set up that next chord or that resolution in that way. Beep. It's right there. And that's tonal gravity. So based on a really simple concept like that, you can take that so much farther. And when you start to practice, like if you sit at your instrument and you're working out these intervals within a key, start on C major, no sharps or flats to worry about. Or if you're on the guitar, it's pretty easy to move around. It's all shapes and shit. And although you should be doing better than that, if you learned from my horrifying failure, my guitar exam. But the point is that when you start to play these intervals and these degrees of the scale in that context of a set key, a set tonal center, you can hear the pull. You can hear that certain notes will have more tension than others. And it's almost like your ear has this idea of what part of the hill you're placing this note on and which side it wants to roll down. So that's a really important thing to grasp and understand. And when you think about it, it's pretty simple, but the possibilities for it are endless. And when you're really good at it, you can use it to upset listener expectations, which is how you start creating more interesting hooks and melodies and using them in the right context. Use a genius. What do we got next? Aha! It's record pickings time. For this week, I'm going to talk about an absolute monster of a classic from my record collection here, and it is Friday Night in San Francisco with Al Di Meola, John McLaughlin, and Paco de Lucia. They are live. It is San Francisco. Let's see, what year? 1981. So John McLaughlin, Al Di Meola are playing acoustic guitar, traditional acoustic guitar, and Paco de Lucia is playing a classical guitar with his fingers. My buddy from my hometown, who was my guitar buddy, we pushed each other, we played together all the time, we jammed. Matt, he's a good dude. And he showed me the first song from that album, Mediterranean Sundance, and it blew me away. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was a real watershed moment for me, just guitar-wise. That was at a point when I was trying to figure out what to do and thinking about going to music school. And that was a record that terrified me, but it also showed me that I had so much more to learn. It was just like, there's so much magic happening on this record that I do not understand, but it is amazing. It is mind-blowing. And I needed to know. I don't need to be a crazy shredder. I don't need to be a perfectionist. I just want to know what are they doing and how are they choosing what they're going to play and stringing these melodies together. And it's like so much just improvisation on the spot, and it's 3 guitar players complementing each other and having a really fun time doing it. They play a lot of songs, kind of selections from the 3 of them. They go back and forth playing tunes, and I think there's one song on here that I can't find it, but regardless, it is just, if you're into guitar at all, it's a great album to listen to. If you're not a guitar player, but you're looking for something, I don't know, mystical, it's got exotic, Spanish flamenco guitar styles in it, but there's a lot of jazz fusion, experimental, but it's pleasing to the ear. That's the biggest thing. They managed to take, like, if you explained the basis of what this record is to someone who's uninitiated, they might be like, no, thank you. I don't want to listen to this. But if they heard it, they would be like, wow, okay, this is pretty crazy. And so if that's you and you haven't heard it, I pulled this out of my record collection to show to you, to talk about to you, and just take a listen. And again, even if you don't like it, try and find something that you can pick up or learn from it. You might hear some sounds that are unfamiliar and maybe you didn't know that you could use. It might just turn something on in your brain and you write something like you've never written before, and that's the most important thing. Always be expanding your musical influences. So, Friday night in San Francisco, Al Di Meola, John McLaughlin, and Paco de Lucia. That is my pick from my vinyl collection for this week. So now let's look at some pictures. I'll shoot and beep. Oh, wrong one. First, we start with this. So this is a picture of my guitars. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough space to put up my classical guitar. It needs a bit of work, but I've got my acoustic, my bass, and my 335 and my Les Paul. And this is a really important thing to have them literally just sitting here. I know we kind of talked about that in the interview with Bruder, but I'm telling you, have your stuff accessible. When you see it, it can't be ignored. If you're looking at it, you know that you can pick it up, play even for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and just get something. Do it every day. Make that music, that creativity, that songwriting a habit. Having your instrument accessible and ready to go at a moment's notice means that there is little to no friction or obstacle between you and your songwriting. So I know this is a totally overused dead meme, and I do not like Drake. Some of his music's pretty catchy, but him as a person, miserable. I do not like him at all. Him and his tattoo where he's standing in front of the Beatles can go fuck off. Hot takes, but whatever. The guy's a chump. Anyway, I like this because there is a psychological switch in the brain for some reason where you need to digest your information in a certain way. And the delivery of the information that you're learning is somehow just as important, or if not more, than the information that you were trying to learn. I can't tell you how many people I've had to teach in lessons, and we're trying to get through it, and they're paying me, and they're dicking around, and they don't practice. And I have to get creative to find a way to make this interesting or to make it stick. And you got to dig and see what is it that they're interested in. Because when it's about them, then they pay attention. People are naturally pretty pig-headed and selfish, and they want to focus on what they like, and they want to focus on themselves. So sometimes you need to find the right teacher or the right delivery method or whatever. And I mean, everybody's a bit of a slob for a good meme. So try and find some good meme pages that have to do with music. I mean, this is a big thing. Just make sure your social media is showing you something that you want. It can be an echo chamber for a lot of really shitty things, and it'll take you down that rabbit hole. But if you're going to be on your phone like an hour a day, why not have it be good stuff and funny stuff about music, songwriting, stuff that's going to inspire you? And really what he's pointing at, I mean, that shit's for real. Parallel octaves and parallel fifths in your voice leading? What are you, 5? Use proper voice leading, like in the bottom picture. He looks pretty pleased with himself, and that's a nice movement there from C to G. Anyway, moving on. Here's a lovely way back playback. We've got Yannick Allwood on the left from the monumental Afterfunk out of Toronto. He's going to be an interview on the show next week, which I'm pretty excited to get that one out there. I had a great conversation with him. And then Bruder, obviously in the middle. We just talked to him today. And that's me, all clean shaven and sweaty, and we're giving our stank faces because we're outside on the patio. I believe it was a 5 Alarm Funk concert, and Casey Roberts and the Live Revolution opened, which, if you know either of those bands, that is a fat concert. That is so huge. It was crazy. So naturally, we needed to commemorate the occasion and have our best funk faces. But this was important because all of us were in bands. We were in band. Me and Bruder were in a band together. I think the whole of both of our bands, if not most, were at this show. And that was a really important thing that we needed to do and take time for. You don't want the music to just be work. You need to take your own social time together and go see bands and get inspired and have a remembrance of what it's like to be in the crowd. Remember how the music makes you feel. Remember the things that get you going. You don't want to draw that line between you and the audience and make it so that you never go back. Because then you're going to lose touch with your audience and they will let you know that you are off in your own world. They want someone who they can stand up with, not be stood over. And this one, God, what is this, 2012, I think? So this is the fabled Caroline House. Jordan's on drums. There's me with a shaved head, and Bruder's on keys. And these were some of the best times, I think, of my life, just in terms of the music and the community and the friendship. Because literally all we did was play music. Music was everything. It was in every point of our lives. And like Bruder said, it was like going to church for us. It was our time for reflection and time for giving ourselves and our energy to something that was much bigger than ourselves. And that was some of the biggest growing musically, I think, that maybe all of us did. I know I definitely did. There was a lot that happened right in that room between all of us and everybody who would come and be a part of it. The music was everything. And if you have that, cultivate it. And if you don't have it, find the people to make sure that you do have it. This kind of thing, this building, it feels like a movement because it is. You're finding a conduit for things that are bigger than you. And that energy needs to go somewhere, make an impact, and change the world for the better. So now we come to our famous quote. Without music, life would be a mistake. Friedrich Nietzsche. And in true Nietzsche fashion, it's so dramatic. The finality of it is just so, not to say I'm not a fan. The guy knows how to think and he knows how to write. But there's always just this self-important finality. It's like he's like an 18th, 19th century German male version of one of the Mean Girls. Yeah. Such a drama queen from the fatherland. But you can't argue with a statement like that. Without music, life would be a mistake. So he's calling into question the very existence of life itself without music. And while Nietzsche does have a flair for the dramatic, I don't know that this is hyperbole. Can you imagine things in a life without the pulsing rhythms of music, even in nature, in the earth, in how your biology works? Bird song, the wind, the sound of waves pounding at the rocks in the beach. I mean, music somehow is already there, whether we're playing it on instruments or not. And there's a really strong connection that when you let yourself open up to receive that kind of music, you plug into something. I've always known that I needed to play music and make music for people. But the more experiences like that I would have, the more sure I was that, it is important. It needs to be done. Every musician who decides, I'm going to go and make an impact, I'm going to create the music that I hear in my head for other people, that's a mission. And a damn good one, a damn important one at that. So with that brings us to the end of our Monday edition of Infinite Musician Television. I want to thank Chris Bruder for being my guest and having a nice friendly Zoom call. I want to thank Bence for being an asshole and coming in here and messing with my live stream. I want to thank my computer and technology for not screwing things up horribly, although I'm sure I'll find something. I very highly doubt that the Instagram live stream went properly because of framing issues. Son of a bitch. But we'll figure it out as we go. Be sure to check out our website, mfile.ca, if you want to learn a bit more about any of the topics that we discussed tonight. Be sure to check out chordprogressionsbook.mfile.ca. Get yourself a hot, steaming copy of this book. Oh yeah. Why put more obstacles, more friction in your way in the creative process? Let me help you prompt your way into the history books. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, MFile Music Theory, and on Facebook as well. We are posting content all of the time. Articles, I like linking to cool music videos that I just find inspiring or interesting. And whether you like them or not, again, check these things out. So be sure to follow us on social media and give me a holler. Post something cool. Like, I want to learn. I want to learn from you as much as I think you should be paying me to learn from me. I'll see you next week. We'll have Yannick Allwood on the show, and we'll be talking a lot more about all the wonderful, lovely things it takes to be an infinite musician. Take care.